Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Joe.
And you're listening to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? The podcast. And this week we're reviewing I, Tonya.
And I, Joe.
Yeah, I think we established that. Welcome to How Many Fingers Am I Holding Up? Featuring two guys getting slam hammered and reviewing movies in a weekly podcast form.
And, hey, thanks, Devin Downey. I see you on Facebook leaving that synonym. That's real considerate of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. If you have any more synonym suggestions, Devin or otherwise, you can submit them on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, all of our social media. All that good-ish. Joe, we're drinking.
Mike, I'm listening. What do we got?
We're drinking Citra Hopped Live Pale Ale by Southern Tier Brewing Company. Beer thoughts, question mark.
Let's take a peep via my taste buds. It's like I sound cooler when I'm tired and delirious and it's 3 a.m.
All right.
It sounds like what...
It tastes better than I expected
like
it to
would
sound because
like.
it was
one
of the cheapest 6-packs I could find.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I like it.
$8.99. So I was like, oh, what's wrong with this beer? Let's find
Yes,
out.
that's me picking up a $5 6-pack. I'm like, what's wrong with you? Let's find out.
Yeah, it's just like it's crisp. It's hoppy.
It's got that Citra taste.
It's a little dry, like an IPA, but a little sort of like fruity.
It's not quite what we were drinking last episode.
It's not as dry as what we were drinking before. Sheesh. Check out a review of Call Me By Your Name, and before that, Florida Project.
Yeah, it was.
It was that.
It was what it was.
Only needed one beer last episode. But
because it was like 9.6%.
It was ridiculous. But this week, this night, for the 5th episode of the night, we've had a long night. We've done The Post, which you'll hear next week with Lindsay Daly. Mm-hmm. We did our Oscar nominations reaction episode, which is already out. We did Florida Project, and we did Call Me By Your Name. And now at 2:33 a.m., we're moving on to I, Tonya, which is a Handy Award nominee for Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress.
Ooh.
Joe, what are the Handy Awards?
The Handy Awards, well, you ever find yourself going, dang, these Oscars, I don't like them much. Well, we're kind of in the same boat. We love the Oscars, and we love following them and reviewing all the movies that are up for Best Picture, as we will this year. But dang, don't you just wish you could have your own Oscars sometimes? Well, the wait's over, friends. It's happening.
Hi, we're the Handy Awards.
Right now. And it's your boys, me. I'm Mike, and he's Joe, and we're having our own film.
Did you just call me by your name? How did we not make that joke before?
I don't know.
I'm sure it'll be the intro.
Yeah, no. For those of you who don't know, we filmed the intros the following morning.
The next morning when we're hungover.
Oh, really? I could never tell. You guys look like shit. You mean every episode starts out with, hey, I'm Mike, and I'm Joe.
What are reviewing these movies do to those boys?
And, she fucks the fish. And then like a fresh Mike and Joe pop up. Who have they have so much hope and glimmer in their eyes.
This night could be anything.
But yeah, The Handy Awards are our very own film awards ceremony, and Mike and I combine our nominations of what we think should be up for Best Picture, Best Actress, Supporting Director. We even have our own little podcast awards thrown in there, like Best Host, Best Guest, and Best Episode. And we allow our viewers and listeners, that's you,
to wake up.
To
We're
vote.
talking to you.
to vote, and you guys get to decide who wins, who loses, who goes home crying.
But Joe, how do you vote?
Well, you can go to any of our social media platforms and say, "Hey, I want to vote." I'm kidding. You type #GiveAHandy2, and if you were to vote for any of the luxurious ladies in this film, you'd say #GiveAHandy2 Margot Robbie, Best Actress, or #GiveAHandy2 Allison Janney, Best Supporting Actress. And it's that easy.
It's that simple, folks. So it's just
Vote counted.
#GiveAHandy2 followed by the handy recipient and then the category that you're voting for them in. So we're going to have that award ceremony. Voting will close on February 19th, so get your votes in before then, and then we'll have the award ceremony on Friday, March 2nd. Weekend of the Oscars. You got Handy Awards, Spirit Awards,
Oscars.
Academy Awards.
Yes. Oscar Awards.
And we're first, so we're better.
Yes.
Oscar Awards, yes.
We're just, people are always like, are you looking forward to the Handy Spirit Academy
Oscar
Awards?
weeks.
Oscar Awards? Yeah.
Joe, you want to give me that IMDb description?
I would love to. Competitive ice skater Tonya Harding rises amongst the ranks at the U.S. Figure Skating Championships. But her future in the activity is thrown into doubt when her ex-husband intervenes. It's kind of like, man, OJ was having such a great NFL career until
His future in the activity was thrown into doubt when his wife was murdered.
what is that? There's like some sort of like Family Guy joke where he's like, "Oh no!" Like it's OJ coming home to like them being murdered, and he's like, "Oh no! Who would do such a thing? Oh no! They had such a beautiful relationship." I'm butchering this. Just look it up on YouTube or something. Family Guy's made so many social commentaries that I feel like I
Everything
refer to
has
one.
sort of a relation to Family Guy in some way.
I'm sure there's multiple OJ jokes in Family Guy.
But just some quick notes about I, Tonya, and then we'll get into the film. I, Tonya was directed by Craig Gillespie. He's previously directed Mr. Woodcock, Lars and the Real Girl, which is a fantastic movie. Fright Night, $1 Million Arm, which I haven't seen, but I know exactly what that movie is, and The Finest Hours. And I think actually, because I was listening to the Director's Cut podcast, as I say every fucking episode of this podcast, but again, can't recommend it highly enough, so informative. But the interviewer for Craig Gillespie was, is it Todd or Tom McCarthy? One of them is a writer for a newspaper, and the other one is the director. Who's the director of Spotlight?
I forget. I want to say Tom.
Tom McCarthy. I think Todd might be a reviewer for like a newspaper.
Yeah.
But Tom McCarthy was interviewing Craig Gillespie, and I guess they worked together on $1 Million Arm, which I didn't know. And they had some kind of funny things to say about working on that movie.
Yeah, I'm sorry
for
both of them.
They didn't want to disparage it, but they knew what that movie was. Yeah. But I, Tonya was written by Steve Rogers, who has previously written Hope Floats, Stepmom, Early Possessions, Kate and Leopold, which is low-key one of my favorite rom-com movies. I don't know if anyone else has ever seen that. P.S. I Love You and Love the Coopers. And it's been nominated for quite a few awards. It was kind of like was sort of off the radar for a while, and it sort of picked up steam really late in awards season. And like it wasn't really, besides like Allison Janney, wasn't really on my radar for a lot of the awards, and then sort of just kind of swooped into view for a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it was nominated at the Oscars for Best Actress, Best Supporting Actress, and Best Film Editing. That's for Margot Robbie and Allison Janney, obviously. At the Critics' Choice for Best Actress in a Comedy, Best Hair and Makeup, and Best Supporting Actress. And it won at their Best Actress in a Comedy and Best Supporting Actress. At the Golden Globes, Best Actress, Best Motion Picture, Musical or Comedy, and Best Supporting Actress, which it won. At the Spirit Awards, Best Editing, Best Female Lead, and Best Supporting Female. At the Producers Guild Award, Best Theatrical Motion Picture. At the Screen Actors Guild Awards, Best Female Actor Leading Role, and it won Best Female Actor Supporting Role. And then the most important of all, at the Handy Awards, like we said, Best Actress and Best Supporting Actress.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about it for notes. We can talk about Tonya.
Alrighty then.
The film.
Yeah. So this is interesting. I didn't quite know what I was getting into. I feel like I knew about the sort of, I mean, we know the term unreliable narrator, but I feel like this is like a group of unreliable narrators, which is like a pretty interesting way to tell a story. I feel like they didn't use that to their fullest. I don't know.
Yeah, in the director's cut episode, they talk about how as the screenplay for this movie was sort of being formulated, they went up and actually interviewed, like it says in the beginning of the movie,
right.
Based on interviews with Tonya Harding and Jeff, what's his name?
Something
Galooly?
Yeah,
Galooly.
Galooly.
But yeah, and they talked about how, their interviews were so contradictory to each other that it's like, how do you piece together a movie from this other than making a movie that's about the fact that nothing that they're saying is like lining up? And they kind of had to just like lean into the fact that like we don't really know what the truth is in this movie. And I do sort of agree that I feel like that could have been used just to sort of start on a wide eye, like, bird's eye view of this movie. Is that like I feel like that could have been used to greater effect in this movie. Like I feel like this movie didn't have a whole lot to say about the truth.
Yeah.
For a movie that shows like 4 or 5 different perspectives on what the
versions
truth is.
Of truth. Yeah. This film breaks the fourth wall. It has flashbacks. It has characters commenting on how truthful they might be. And again, in addition to what you just said, it tries a lot of things. And I don't think they all work, but it tries a lot of things. It almost tries too much.
Yeah.
Like, I was just kind of like, man, like, it's really good at parts. And then sometimes they just, like, throw a fucking curveball in there. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess.
It's unique, for sure.
It's definitely... I mean, I've heard it... I don't like to compare it to, like... Oh, it's kind of like a Coen Brothers film, because I hate that description of things now. Like, no, it's not. The Coen Brothers have a very distinct... I don't know. I think just because something's dark comedy, like, I hate that it's, like, compared to the Coen Brothers.
Yeah.
But I won't deny this is very Martin Scorsese. It's incredibly Goodfellas-esque.
I've heard that from other people, that it's Goodfellas of figure skating.
It is, and it's almost just like, sometimes you're just kind of like, what do you... I don't know. There's a lot of blatant kind of... I don't know, just... some of it's very unique, but some of it just seems like it's borrowing from a lot of different films and directors. Like a lot of the camera work, I'm trying to think of who that's like David O. Russell, kind of.
Yeah.
Like where they'll just kind of be like, they'll kind of like run like with a Steadicam into somebody's face. Yeah, it's like David O. Russell meets Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas.
It's just kind of like all over the place throughout, and like there's definitely enough of a through line that like you get the point, and like it's overall a very enjoyable movie. I would recommend it to a lot of people. But there's just some things that I like really want to like nitpick on this movie, just in terms of like, I get that the whole point that they tried to get across is through like the differing versions of the truth and like all these different people saying different things, but like they sort of like hammer it home too much, because they film all these different interviews with the different characters in like different aspect ratios and just like different settings, and it just kind of like, we just keep jumping between like, here's Allison Janney in like a like almost like a square like aspect ratio, and then here's like everyone else in like a wider one, and I think they do Tonya in a square one, but it's jumping all over the place. It's like almost like looking like different film qualities for some of them. Like Jeff's one looks decently high quality, whereas like Allison Janney and Tonya, it looks like they're trying to recreate like an older style of like film. It's in that look.
Confusing because they're so desperately trying to make this look like a documentary or kind of something more modern, like The Office with talking headshots. When
right,
it's really,
but they don't lean into it enough because they keep jumping around. Like I would be okay if they like picked one aspect ratio, even if it's the square-ish one, and stick with that through the entirety of it, not just through like the talking heads, but through like the recreations of what's happening, or their dramatization of what happened like in this movie. Like it's just off-putting to like keep going back and forth to like those aspect ratios, the widescreen, and then like the sort of like sitting down interview documentary style talking heads to like when like she's like on like the ice skating, and it's like this like incredibly cinematic, like stitched together, like everything in the perfect place, choreographed type scene, and like that doesn't really fit with like her sitting in like a square frame in her kitchen, and it's like not even like properly like white balanced. It looks like intentionally like they're trying to make it look like bad footage. It's just like the ugly yellow of that room, but then we go to her like ice skating, and it's like perfectly white balanced, and like her makeup is like done perfectly to like catch the lights from like the stadium that she's ice skating in, and like it looks great, but it looks too good compared to the rest of the movie almost.
It's pretty crazy that she's breaking the fourth wall, but that she's also talking to the camera in talking heads. It's just kind of, there's a lot of things where it's like, pick something, man. You got to pick something. There's, especially with like them talking to the reporter from Hard Copy, I was just kind of like, what is like this would be the first thing that I would cut from this movie.
I would cut out that entire Hard Copy report.
I was waiting for him to come more into play with the actual like events of the movie, and it never comes. And at the end of the movie, I'm like, I guess that's just added to make it look more like some sort of like 40-40, like, or just some sort of, is that what the ESPN one's called? 40-40?
30 for 30.
30 for 30? Or just some sort of like true crime kind of, or just like a documentary, like when it's like, you're doing your own thing, it's just, I don't know. Or it's just everybody else was represented in the talking heads, was represented in the actual film, and he was just so out of place. I feel like I don't know.
I felt like he was trying to like replicate like interviews and like source footage that we didn't have access to, so it didn't need to be replicated. Like you could have dramatized that while still staying true to the source footage. Like the visuals of, because he does talk, and maybe I'm just saying that because he does talk about in the director's cut interview about like a big inspiration for the movie was he found this documentary that like Yale students filmed with Tonya Harding. I think it's before the incident, but like a lot of their interviews with Tonya are from that. A lot of their sort of the way they created the mother character is from that, because that's some of the only really like footage they have. of the mom characters from this Yale documentary. It's in the documentary, she actually has like the parrot on her shoulder. That's where they sort of came up with that inspiration for that, sort of character quirk and trait. And I feel like they were trying to replicate that when like that. It's not like that was a widely seen documentary that we need to be like, oh, okay, like now I get what you're going for. Like it was just kind of like drawing from an inspiration that the rest of us weren't seeing and wasn't really necessary.
Yeah, a lot of I love Allison Janney, and she is one of the best supporting actress performances of the year. But I feel like I could have done without her talking heads. Like I was just kind of like, this isn't improving her performance, kind of. Like I really love like every time she interacts with any of the child actors or anything with Margot Robbie is like, whew, like perfect. But then like sometimes when she's talking to the fucking bird on her shoulder, she's talking to the talking head shot, I'm just kind of like, I guess with this character, I don't know. It was just, yeah.
It might have felt better if there wasn't so much other unnecessary stuff. Maybe that holds more weight. But I like you said, I think the hard copy reporter, like that works maybe in a movie that, because it's one of my other complaints about this is like, not only does it really like not really give enough due diligence to trying to say what it thinks the truth is or say a truth about, the truth in quotes. But it seems like a movie that wants to and should have been, but wasn't about ultimately in the end, the press and media. Like so much of the trailer is like, oh, like America wants like someone to love, but they also want someone to hate. But we don't really get to see a whole lot of like, how did the press like really demonize or villainize like Tonya Harding in this? Like we get a whole lot of her perspective and not really a lot of like, I feel like we don't really get any scenes of like people like screaming at her about Nancy or like saying anything to her face. And like all it is just like negative press coverage that we know she probably saw, but we don't actually see her seeing the negative press coverage. And we don't have any interactions with her with like Nancy Kerrigan fans or just people who are anti-Tonya at that point. Like
the crazy part is that this film is almost better before the actual incident of what happens. And I feel like the film has a hard time making something just making this film more meaningful from the incident that this film is about. I don't know, it's weird. There's a lot of really, I mean, it's better than anything else that we've seen about Tonya Harding. I mean, Tonya Harding has kind of always been this sort of tabloid, trashy, like Lifetime movie of the week topic. I mean, we've seen some good documentaries out there about it. But even some documentaries are kind of like tabloidy and trashy about this. So it was cool to see so many great performances and everything and such a fresh take and new idea on it. It was great to get like a lot of like pretty interesting insight, honestly. Just the earlier struggles of Tonya Harding and what made this person kind of with like, especially with like the classism within like the skating ranks. Tonya Harding was not what the figure skating judges wanted to elevate as the standard of their sport and everything. I don't know. There was other things that bothered me about this was I felt like the head replacement was kind of, oh god, it was pretty rough around the edges. It
was really rough.
Yeah.
Which it's baffling to me because I hear so many people praising like, oh my god, the ice skating scenes, and I think that's why it stuck out to me, is because like they talk about it so much in the director's cut, and then I've read so many reviews that are like, the ice skating scenes in this are just like truly like wonderful. And like even in the director's cut podcast, like Tom McCarthy is talking about how his wife is a professional figure skater, and she saw those scenes and was like, oh yeah, like he absolutely nailed what it's like. And like, yeah, maybe, but was no one else taken out of this movie by like how obvious it is that we're just stitching Margot Robbie's face on a professional figure skater's body? And like, yeah, maybe like, I don't know. I just, once I noticed it, it was like I couldn't look away, and I don't even remember seeing any like the moves he was actually doing, because I would just be looking at like Margot Robbie's face and be like, that doesn't look natural. That doesn't look natural. Like it seems like the person skating is like skating too fast for like Margot's face to keep up at times. Like they didn't like, if they rotoscoped it, they didn't rotoscope it correctly going frame by frame every time, or if they were matching it up, like the algorithm couldn't totally keep up with like the actual speed that like the actual ice skaters' bodies were going.
Right. Because the thing is, the camera works really great.
Oh yeah, and they did like Steadicam on ice, which is like really impressive.
I remember you telling me about that. Yeah. I don't know. I was even reading about like that. I guess this is more of a testament to just Tonya Harding as a person. But I was reading that the triple axel is still so hard to this day, that they couldn't find, or just difficult. It's just a difficult task to perform. That they couldn't find a body double to perform it on camera, so they had to resort to like clever editing. But I feel like that's also pretty obvious that.
A lot of that is like, even if it's not the triple axel, like when she does that one move where she like goes down on like one skate and like spins around, they would do a lot of that where I'd be like, I feel like I'm watching like the fucking like Tasmanian Devil or something right here. Like it looks too fast for actual stuff. And like I know they would use those scenes very clearly for transitions where like it would be Margot Robbie stitched on the body double before that, and then she would come out of that spin and it's Margot Robbie in real life, and she's doing like the arm spread and stuff. They would do a lot of those crazy spins where we can't even see her face, she's spinning so fast, which doesn't feel real. And then she would come out of that and it would be the actual Margot Robbie.
The other thing is that I don't know. It felt like so much of a puff piece on Tonya Harding. It was like really just, I don't know. She gets kind of like the like Marcia Clark treatment, like from like the OJ, like to kind of circle back around to the OJ trials. She kind of gets like this, like where she was kind of the butt of everybody's jokes when it was happening. Now that the OJ thing has recently made a resurgence, she's just kind of like back, like, hey, like, what happened, yada, yada, yada. That was a stupid, that didn't explain what I meant at all. It's just that, what's it called? I don't know. I'll get back to it later, but because that's one of my points I want to make near the end. That this film is kind of a puff piece on Tonya Harding. That was kind of the joke that I made about the IMDb description, where it's just kind of like, I feel like she had a lot more to do with what actually happened than this film lets on.
Yeah. Although, I mean, if you're going off the film is based on those interviews, it seems like Jeff has at least admitted, like, at the worst, I ruined her career, and she probably wouldn't have had those ideas about, doing the threats, the threatening death letters to Nancy in the first place.
Yeah. I was reading a lot of reviews that were like, I think like the dark comedy aspect like undercuts like the viciousness of like the violence
they meant it to
portrayed in this movie. Yeah, and yeah.
He says that explicitly in the Director's Cut podcast. He says like, we wanted it to be a comedy, but we knew that there was this dark story of violence, and we didn't know how to portray the violence without sort of like completely turning the movie into this really dark drama. So we thought, why not have her sort of like break the fourth wall in like the violence scenes, almost as sort of like a funny way of being like, and just sort of approaching it from the aspect of like, this happens so much that it's commonplace that like I can talk to you like while I'm getting like the shit kicked out of me in these domestic violence scenes.
Like, he hit me a lot. Yeah. And I didn't think it... I think more what they were trying to say is, like, this minimizes, like, domestic violence, kind of. Or
the
just...
critics, you mean? Or
Yeah, or just, reviews have come across. Yeah, critics, maybe, like, people trying to be, like, a little more woke or something. But I was like... Have you seen 3 billboards?
Yeah, I mean,
like,
I think it's the opposite in this
like,
movie, because I think the point they're trying to make is like, this happened so much to Tonya that she was sort of desensitized to it in a way. In terms of,
it does.
like,
No, I think
it was just a part of her life, and I don't know. I think it's almost more affecting to. I sort of disagree with the director's choice to break the fourth wall as the way of getting that across, because I think, just stylistically, in terms of, they would have like narration, and like it would almost be like, if you're writing it out in the script, it would be like blah 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 ... and then she would pick up with like it was just like a long pause between like when the narration stopped and then the fourth wall would pick up the sentence that she was saying. And I just feel like there's a way where you could have maybe split those sentences up so that it's a complete sentence narration, and then she has chance to deliver a complete sentence in the fourth wall break, because they would never line up, like the sort of inflection in her voice. Like, she'd be saying something and then this, well, I'm getting the shit kicked out of it. Like, it never lined up with the narration.
Yeah,
it just always stuck out in that weird way, just aesthetically speaking, purely.
Yeah, but as a response to people who say that, I still think I don't know. I thought this appropriately depicted domestic abuse as like this kind of tragic cycle that makes it hard for women to extricate themselves from what's happening, like there's I don't know, the way that they portrayed physical abuse in this movie, like, honestly was like technically jarring and surprising. I was like, I would kind of be like, whoa, like, like whenever it happened, which is, I can imagine what it feels like in real life. It was like an emotional jump scare at some times when they really like nailed it. There's also a scene that I loved where the camera is not so much following, like the David O. Russell kind of like following it does pretty frequently, but it's just kind of like objectively in a room with Tonya and Jeff, and then he just like fucking just hits her so casually, and like that's like really heartbreaking to watch, as well as just kind of him kind of like screaming and running around and like hitting her or something. But no, exactly like what you said, the film makes physical abuse so pedestrian and routine, and early in the film, before her husband really comes into play, and before and during her husband coming into play, and like, I think the film does a pretty good job of being like, wow, isn't this horrifying? Like, I don't know. Yeah, and I do like the way they kind of sort of, like, I think it's like they do show it in sort of, comedic is not the term, but it's and lighthearted is not the term either, but they're not really showing it, like, it's not melodramatic really, exactly,
when they have those scenes, but I think they're still giving it the full weight and the attention, and they are still trying to shed light on what's going on in those scenes. And I think there's a lot that's shown through them. Like, particularly, I really like when Allison Janney as Lavana is sort of like lecturing Tonya for being with Jeff, and she's kind of like talking about how she realizes that like Jeff is beating the shit out of Tonya, but the way she says it, it's like she's not able to realize that, like, yeah, but you you beat Tonya up too. Like, this is the same shit that you do to Tonya. Like, you're giving her bruises too, and you fucking threw like a knife at her and shit. Like, it's just how sort of like ignorant Levana is, that she doesn't see like her own faults as a mother. You know, even as she's like criticizing Tonya for being with someone who beats her. Like, yeah, you beat her too. Like, you're no better than Jeff.
Yeah. I really like, there's some parts where this script is really good. Like the part, and it's earlier in the film. Maybe it could have performed better at another point in the film. But Tonya says, like, you know, Nancy gets hit one time and the rest of the world shits or something like that. And she's like, for me, it's an all the time occurrence. She's completely like, it's an all the time occurrence. It just shows like how Tonya is like completely like desensitized to like, I get hit all the time. Like, what's this about? You know,
to just violence.
It shows like how calloused she is by like all this abuse and everything. So it is like this abuse plays a large part in what happens later. I don't know. So it needs to happen. I don't know.
I think Allison Janney, I mean, I can't really say enough good things about Allison Janney in this. I think it's a fantastic performance.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And I think what's so great about it is that, like, she's funny in this movie, but she also keeps, like, enough of, like, having, like, teeth to this character and being enough of, like, just a cold person that, like, we're not rooting for her. Like, even if we're laughing at some of the things she's saying and she's quirky and, you know, she's funny, but we're never like, oh yeah, like, go Levana or go like Tanya's mom. Whereas like some other movies do that, where like they'll have a shitty character but they're so funny and charming that we're kind of like, oh yeah, go her. Like, I loved when she did that. But we never are allowed to sort of feel that way about her in this. And I think a lot of that has to be given to Allison Janney's credit. And I really like the way that she is sort of like because we've had a lot in film of like typical sort of like passive aggressive moms that are just kind of like, oh, you shouldn't eat that, you got to watch your figure, and just always criticizing their daughters and trying to sort of like relive like a second life through their daughters, and, you know, trying to help them avoid mistakes that they made, but like to like a vindictive degree. Right. But she sort of takes it too far, where it's like in other roles we've seen mothers like that who are always criticizing their daughters, but it's sort of like out of love. Whereas in this, we don't see any love from Allison Janney, because she's sort of this character who's incapable of expressing love and possibly even incapable of feeling love for other characters. Like, she just has this very warped view. And I really like the one scene with Margot and her in the diner where she kind of opens up a little bit about her past and like her relationship with her mother. And she kind of thinks she's being like a good mother with the things she's doing. But again, it's not really out of like love. It's just kind of like out of this motherly duty. And like, she talks about like, you know, her being a bitch being like a sacrifice that she's making, like, for Margot, because she wanted her to like go farther in life. And it's just a very warped view of love, and she doesn't really know how to express it at all. And I think that's a really great performance from Allison Janney.
It is. There were parts where I wish the dynamic between Tonya and her mom wasn't as single faceted as it was. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think they were trying to be true to the actual truth of it, because they still to this day don't actually know where, I mean, the filmmakers and Tonya at least don't know where Levana, whatever her last name is. Like, they don't know. She just does not have contact with Tonya anymore. That's how awful and strained their relationship got. So, I mean, it was sort of single-faceted in that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Or just... Yeah, it's a complicated relationship, and I don't know. We have seen a lot of, like, mothers and daughters, especially this Oscar season, I feel like, you know, like, as opposed to, like, Lady Bird or something. But I almost feel like Haley in the Florida Project, like Tanya's mom thinks she's doing like you're just kind of saying, like she thinks she's doing the best she can for Tanya. Like she is spending like her entire life kind of driving her to this ice skating rink. And she's always there. She's not like an absent mother kind of. She's always in Tanya's ring. And she's working this kind of like shitty waitress job and then like blowing all that money on like ice skating lessons. She is trying to like, I don't know. She is trying, and there is some sort of like love language there, but there is definitely a gigantic like disconnect where it's kind of like, oh no, like Tanya needs actual like love and affection that children need. And again, Tanya spends like her whole life not only like looking for that from her mother, and especially like that tape recording scene at the end is especially heartbreaking. It's kind of, she's also trying to find that love in her, like the Jeff Galooly, who, even though kind of follows in the tracks of her mother and beats her up, like, my God, like what a silver lining, kind of like, because he says like, oh, like you're pretty, and like I do love you, like, and like, wow, like what are like, like I can, you can tell, like, even though he's kind of a shitty person, like Tanya's like, oh my gosh, like affection, like,
because Lavana doesn't know how to express that at all. She doesn't have the tools or the language to, like there's never any scene where like the closest she comes is sort of like yelling at Tonya about like why she did the things she did, but in doing that she's also sort of telling Tonya like, no, I'm not going to come help you like try to get to the Olympics. Like she's saying it through like a bitter kind of resentful way. And then the other only sort of closest scene we get, and it's not something that Tonya is able to bear witness to, is when Tanya's, I guess it's at Lillehammer when she's doing like the last like Olympics thing, and her mom is at her waitress job, and she just kind of stops to watch the TV, and her boss is like yelling at her like, I'm not paying you to stand around, and she's like, I want to see her face, like when she like does it or whatever. Like that's sort of like a little bit of affection going on there, but that's not something that Tonya is able to see.
Yeah.
So yeah, she in turn, Tonya is not really raised with the tools to understand what real love or affection looks like, so she mistakes. I mean, I do think that Jeff has love for her, but he also has, again, very stunted, warped tools and ways of showing love and affection. I think that's also, like, I think Sebastian Stan gives a really great performance in this. Definitely, yeah. One of my favorite performances in this. And I haven't really liked him in a lot before. I guess I've really only seen him in Captain America and Avengers and stuff. And I really don't like Bucky Barnes as a character, or him as the actor in that. But I think he's great in this because he gives a pretty good like impersonation of Jeff Galooly while also capturing the emotions of Jeff and sort of not humanizing him. Like, I don't think he makes us forgive Jeff at all, but he makes us understand Jeff in a way. Like, I like the scene in like the cop car, like when they get pulled over by the cop car and the cop's walking over and he's like, if you say a fucking word, I'll fucking kill you. And then he leans over and like kisses her. And they talked in the director's cut about how he did that like in the audition, and that's when they were like, oh, okay, that wasn't even, the kiss wasn't in the script that he was reading for the audition. And that's when they were like, oh, he understands it. Like, we're trying to express that, like, we're not forgiving at all of the domestic abuse, but we're trying to maybe express like, why would Tonya stay with someone who's beating the shit out of her all the time? And it's because he does have these kind of hot and cold flashes of like, I'm freaking out now, but he is still expressing love in his own really fucked up way. And like, she's sort of only seeing that aspect of it at times when she chooses to stay. And like, it's a very complex relationship, and I like the way that they approach that in this movie. I think he's a big part of that, obviously, because he added something that wasn't even in the script with that sort of impromptu kiss of like, you know, if you tell anyone, I'm going to fucking kill you, and then I'm just going to kiss you right now. Like, it's so on and off and hot and cold, and Katy Perry. in that scene. I laughed really hard, and I read a Letterboxd review. I need to start writing these funny Letterboxd reviews down when I come across them.
Yeah.
I feel bad not giving credit to these people, but there was one that was like. I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but it was basically pointing out that just like the funniest part of this movie is the unintentional part of when the narration says, I was 15, and then just full grown ass Margot Robbie comes on screen. It's just so clearly not 15 in that scene. And they're trying their best in like the makeup department. Like they've given her braces. Mm-hmm. She's trying her best in the acting department because she's like trying to like lick her braces and like just be very conscious of them, and she's sort of talking through and around her braces in that scene, but she just does not look 15. And Jeff doesn't look very young either. I mean, it's fine because he's supposed to be older than her, but she, my God, so far from 15 in that scene. I wish they could just like write around that scene, like I don't know, show it as like archival footage or something, or
change
not
the
show
ages
it.
slightly, or I don't know. I mean, I think we were saying this during the establishing shot when we're reacting to just makeup or whatever. We're talking about makeup in movies. But yeah, I mean, they did kind of all they could, but it just still looked fucking ridiculous. And it's not even like it's just one scene. It's a decent portion of the movie.
Yeah.
And I was telling you that, like, it just reminded me of, like, Wet Hot American Summer, like, the first day of camp, like, the first season of that show, and it's just kind of like, oh, man, here's all these 40-something-year-old actors playing, like, teenagers at, like, a summer camp. It's just, like, it's just cartoony, like, how ridiculous it is.
She has just such, like, a, like, defined face in the features, and she's got like kind of like a gaunt face that's just so thin and like pointy almost, and it's just the opposite because like 15-year-olds are like pudgy and swollen and like puffy and like just doughy like as 15-year-olds.
She's also she is our age. She's exactly our age, Margot Robbie. Yes.
I would think she's in her 30s.
No, and that's the thing, is that, like, it was just, I remember somebody was like, isn't it weird that she's playing, like, Will Smith's, like, love interest? I was like, I don't know, it's not that far of a stretch. And then I was like, oh, wow, she was born in 1990.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was just kind of like, she's just a very mature-looking, like, I can't imagine, like, can you imagine looking at Margot Robbie and being like, oh yeah, she was in my class in high school. Like, you know, like, that's fucking bizarre. Like, kind of. So she's just, it's already working against her where she looks like this incredibly just, she looks like somebody in Hollywood who's like 40, who has kind of like Botox to look like they're like 20, you know, like it's just, that's just the way she looks, kind of. I don't know. So it is, I don't know. So still trying to like wrap your mind around that. I don't know. It's it's not great. I'm not a big fan of. I thought it was goofy, and that was not their intention, I can imagine.
We haven't really talked about the bodyguard Sean in this, who like kind of steals the whole movie. Like,
he has a really
solid performance. He's a lot of the comedic parts of this movie.
Yeah.
I think Jeff has a few comedic parts as well. But a lot of them tend to involve Sean being in the scene as well. He's just kind of like this guy that's like tagging around with Jeff, and like he's kind of like a real life like Napoleon Dynamite, whereas like Napoleon Dynamite would just talk about like, oh yeah, like I've been like training with like my bow staff and like, I can do all this stuff. And then like in this movie, like Sean is like, yeah, like I'm special ops, like, I'm like CIA or whatever, and like, yeah, like I work for the government. When in like in the one interview, they're like, yeah, but you don't. And he's like, no, but I do. Like, I work for like the CIA, and they're like, no, we checked. You don't. Like,
Yeah.
It's like Napoleon Dynamite. If someone was like, no, yeah, you've never trained with a bow staff, Napoleon, and you've never shot wolverines in Alaska with your uncle.
Yeah. It is. I mean, I don't really know too much about the whole Tonya Harding story, but I feel like we never. The whole I'm Tanya's bodyguard thing doesn't come up until like there's already some sort of interrogation, and that I feel like that punchline didn't work where he's like, Tony Herring, I don't think I've ever met her. Which is, it's funny and it's in the trailer, and then the guy is, the FBI agent is just kind of like, you're her bodyguard, and he's like, oh yeah, but like I feel like there's no scene where it's ever like they're like, and now he's my bodyguard, kind of, you know, like it was just kind of like he's just like Jeff's like kind of
that might have been something that
goofy
maybe
friend.
It felt like that got left on the cutting room floor. I mean, I think they did have when they were doing like
I can imagine like, oh, she gets a death threat, and now like, you know, he's always around anyway, so he gets this job.
I think they do, I mean, because they have like the talking heads that set up the movie, and they establish like everyone that's going to talking head in the beginning, and I think they do say like Tanya's bodyguard maybe in like the text underneath his name in the very beginning. Yeah, but you're right, they don't have a scene where they're like, oh, you're my bodyguard now. Yeah. So it is kind of jarring in that aspect.
Yeah. It makes some of these punchlines not work as well. But yeah. You want to get in some finger ratings?
Yeah, the only like last thing that I want to talk about, or maybe just two last things, because we've kind of touched on like everything else. Like, I guess we haven't really talked about Margot Robbie, herself and her performance of Tonya Harding, and it's great. You know, we nominated her for a Handy because of how great it is. But I feel like they hurt it a little bit by showing the real footage at the end.
Yeah, I don't
because everybody else is so spot on. Like, you know, Allison Janney does a pretty great, at least capturing of the emotions of Margot or Tanya's mother, and then Sebastian Stan as Jeff Galooly is almost like uncanny how well he nails that accent and just like that look of like not being an ugly guy, but just kind of like making the wrong fashion choices and just like that mustache and just the way he looks and carries himself is really well. And then like Sean as the bodyguard, like does a good job of like kicking it up into like the caricature level just enough to make it a comedic role while still capturing how weird that guy is as a bodyguard. Like a lot of it seems weirder than it is possible, but it's drawn from like real life or whatever. Right. Whereas when they show the real footage of Tonya Harding, she's way more normal than Margot Robbie is really playing her. Like Margot Robbie is playing her pretty deep into caricature, and I think that's the only thing that I really don't like about her performance is that like she doesn't really have that much of an accent, whereas like Margot Robbie really plays that accent up in terms of like, you know, America needs someone to love, but they also need someone to hate. Yeah, and like Tonya Harding doesn't really talk like that when you hear, and that's the problem with like if Margot Robbie is going to take that route, that's fine, but maybe don't show us the footage of Tonya Harding talking at the end. We could have just seen her skating. We didn't need to hear.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
and it might have been something that was contractually obligated because I feel like they do that a lot with these true story movies all the time. But like I remember thinking that Margot Robbie was great the whole movie, and then seeing that and kind of having my impression of her hurt. Right. But I still think she's great because she captures a lot of the emotions of the movie and like is really able to deliver in some really key scenes. Like my favorite and most notable of which being when she's sort of at the final courtroom scene and they're sentencing her after she's been found guilty, and then they're giving her the sentencing at that hearing, and you know she's not going to do any jail time, but she's going to have to pay a fine, and she's going to do a lot of community service, and she's going to be banned from skating for life. And it's kind of like, well, can I say something? And she's talking to the judge, and she's trying to like walk him back from that. And she's like, you know, like, if you're taking away skating, like you're giving me like a life sentence. Like I need skating. That's like all I have. And like, you know, like I'll go to jail. Like I'll do 3 years in jail if it means being able to skate again. And like, she just gives like a really great like monologue speech in her like pleading to the judge in that scene. It's like really heartbreaking to watch. And she has a lot of other scenes that are like that, really good. But I think the times when she maybe goes into the comedic element too far to try and play this like caricature of Tonya Harding are maybe not the greatest. But it's really carried by those dramatic performances that she does give.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I just wanted to fit that in before we got into our final ratings of this movie.
It wasn't even crazy really about like, because she really does that's such a great scene in the courtroom. I like really wasn't crazy about like the boxing scene after that.
Oh yeah,
I was just kind of like, yeah.
Well, it was another
even
instance
if this
of like
did happen, like I don't know.
It was like breaking the fourth wall, and I'm like, I'm okay with that in concept, but it was another case of like narration starts a sentence, and then the fourth wall finishes the sentence. Like the inflection is just totally off, and there's like that weird pause in between the narration finishes. And that's the fucking truth. Like it's just it does not aesthetically fit to have the narration start something and the you know fourth wall break it. Like it's got to be like finish sentence, new sentence, rather than and we're leading up to and we'll finish it on this. Like,
yeah. And I understand like a lot of the metaphor of what's happening there and everything, and how ironic it is that that's what she went into. She's continuing to be kind of this punching bag, and America's cheering that on or whatever. But again, like it was like we were talking about earlier, and it's like America wants somebody to love and somebody to hate, kind of. It was just kind of like, I feel like we're too little too late for like this to be like the end. Just say, I thought a much more powerful scene was like her in like her apartment, like drinking like a Coors Light and kind of like making like a microwave meal, like a TV dinner kind of. And meanwhile, in the background, like Letterman does like a top 10 list of like that was so much more powerful, and that says so much more about like America and everything and the news cycle than to kind of like. And then I went into boxing because it's like I didn't really know what else to do, and you know, I don't know, but yeah, that's everything I wanted to get to.
Let me read this Rotten Tomatoes real quick. On review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, I, Tonya has an approval rating of 90% based on 224 reviews with an average rating of 7.8 out of 10. Excuse me. The site's critical consensus reads, led by strong work from Margot Robbie and Allison Janney, I, Tonya finds the humor in its real-life story without losing sight of its more tragic and emotionally resonant elements.
All right, well, I can, I'll go first. Something I was saying earlier in the episode that I struggled to finish my thought with. I was just like thinking about as we kept recording. And I do feel like this, I kind of came away a little frustrated knowing what I know about like what had happened. This is also like weird. I feel like it's not even really like true crime. So I feel like no one really dies. It's kind of, and then like this film's not really like true crime film. It's at a small part, it's almost like a heist film. Especially when they start to introduce the two guys that the bodyguard hires. But I don't know. She had something to do with this, and I feel like they don't lay a lot of kind of like, Tonya deserved kind of what she got in some way. I mean, or at least that's what I believe. And I feel like this is like such a purely sympathetic tale of Tonya Harding, who the film kind of tries to say like, oh, she was at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people who are constantly mistreating her. It's just like very sympathetic to her plight. And I was just kind of like, yeah, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if that's entirely truthful. And it was also kind of like, to the point like where even before I saw the film, me and Saber were talking about like, like Margot Robbie was on like the red carpet, like holding hands like with the real Tonya Harding now. It was just kind of like, committed a crime. Like, like it's kind of weird to have that. I don't know. And like, I don't know what it took for Tonya Harding to kind of, like maybe like her management to be like, yeah, she'll be a part of this movie, or no, she won't be a part of this movie, like under these conditions or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I just thought that was weird. But I don't know. The other thing that I did like about this movie was Tonya Harding's mom was like this toxic figure who nonetheless was able to motivate her child to do great things. And I mean, again, that's a fucking twisted point of view that she does say at the diner. But like, that's kind of true. Like, it's kind of like whiplash, Is it worth it? It also reminds me of like a Mr. Sketch bit that they do where it's kind of like this service that advertises like will abuse your kids or teach you how to abuse your kids in just the right way that they'll be destined for greatness. I don't know. It's a great bit. Yeah, no. I feel like I've said everything I need to say about this film. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it a lot. I feel like maybe I bashed it a little too much. I was definitely, like we said at the beginning, I was entertained the entire time. It was a fun movie, even though it has darkness to it, appropriately too. Some of the effects are a little grimy. The performances are great, and they're really the buoy that lifts a lot of the lesser things. There's some of just like the weirder decisions, like the 15-year-old Margot Robbie. I think I'm gonna give it 4 fingers.
Yeah, I think I've said pretty much everything in this review. I'm just scanning. I don't think I really missed anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I like this movie a lot too. I enjoyed it a lot. There's scenes that like really touched me and moved me in this. Scenes that I think were like really well advised.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think on the flip side, there's some scenes that were not ill advised, but less well advised
Yes.
in this movie. Like there's nothing that I like really hated
Mm-hmm.
in this, with the exception of just the facial stitching in the ice skating scenes. I feel like it took away from how beautifully they were shot.
Mm-hmm.
Just the decision to stitch Margot Robbie's face on there, like I feel like that's a bold choice to be like, oh, we can make this work, and then to do it, and then to not be like, oh, this didn't work, let's find a different way to go with this. Like, but I mean, I guess it's a gamble they took, and it paid off, because there's a lot of people who have talked about how greatly they admire the ice skating scenes in this. But it did not work for me. It was like a big distraction. That's like a whole finger right there subtracted from those, because I could not watch those scenes and not look at her face and be like, what am I looking at? Like, this looks like a video game character. Like the rest of the movie looks so good and like in cinematic, besides when they do like the talking head stuff. And then this is just like a whole other weird element to it. Like, It's hard to overlook that. And then I think just like for me, like I've talked about so many times in this podcast, like I love consistency. I love when something can have a really singular tone. And I think while this had a singular narrative tone, it didn't have a singular visual or aesthetic tone to it. Just between jumping around with all the different talking head stuff. And I just can't really find like a good justification for doing like the different aspect ratios or making all the talking head stuff look so different, because they didn't try to make the rest of the movie look documentarian. Like they went like beyond cinematic for some scenes.
Oh yeah,
like,
definitely.
and they look beautiful. Like, you know, like the one scene where she does, I guess I don't know if it's the triple axel or one of the other scenes where she does like that really sprawl. They use it in the trailer a lot. She's doing like the sprawling out like right into the camera in like slow motion, and it looks beautiful. It's like uber cinematic. It's like something from like a Zack Snyder movie almost for like ice skating.
Yeah.
It's great. But when you put that in the same movie as like those like square aspect ratio shots of like Alice and Janney, it's really jarring, and I don't really appreciate that too much. But I think the acting's great pretty much throughout. Like, I can't think of anyone that really is bad or even like mediocre in this movie. Like, you know, I could have seen a supporting actor nod for Sebastian Stan, or I should have wrote his name down, the guy who plays Sean the bodyguard. He totally was a great surprise and stole the show. And then obviously Allison Janney and Margot Robbie have seen their nominations come through. But yeah, and then I think with the way they handled the ending too kind of bothered me, and kind of just throwing that hard copy reporter in there too was like that's something for another movie that focused more on what the press actually did and said about Tonya Harding. But we really only get that one scene of like the Letterman thing, like you said, and then just seeing that the press is out there, but we're not really seeing like what is the actual narrative that's being spun in the press. We're not seeing like how are like everyday citizens, you know, interacting or reacting to Tonya as they see her in real life, because I have to imagine that people were saying stuff to her if she was as villainized as she was claiming to be in the press.
Right. It's kind of like we get like that little girl asking her for an interview, but we don't get somebody.
Yeah, we don't get the guy that's like, you fucking bitch. I love Nancy.
Yeah.
So for those reasons, I'm going to give it 3.5. Still highly enjoyed it. Would still highly recommend it. Can't really hate on it too much. But I do think there were some flaws that I would have liked to see corrected in this movie. But very funny, very dark, very moving and affecting in those ways. So 3.5 fingers for me. So that'll come out to 3.75, which will round down to 3.5 fingers for us here at the podcast. We got anything else to say?
No, I believe
handy awards. Make sure if you saw this movie and enjoyed it, it is eligible for Margot Robbie for Best Actress and Allison Janney for Best Supporting Actress. So you can vote for either of those using hashtag Give a Handy to Margot Robbie Best Actress or hashtag Give a Handy to Allison Janney Best Supporting Actress. Excuse me. It's real late, and we're finally done recording all our episodes for the night. And Joe and I are so ready for bed. So as always, you can find all of our stuff at howmanyfingerspodcast.com. YouTube links, MailChimp mailing lists. God damn it. Amazon, iTunes, merch, all that shit. It's all on howmanyfingerspodcast.com. Do the work yourselves. I'm done. We're done with our marathon recording session. And tune in next week for the post with Lindsay Daly. Great episode that we already recorded earlier in the night. So I can confirm that it was a great episode.
Yeah.
So tune in for that. We're going to go to bed. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.